Welcome back to the channel, Legendary Legacy, audiobook free daily, where you can enjoy the best books without spending a penny. Today, we will continue with the book, Thick Face, Black Heart by author Chin-Ning Chu. This is a book that teaches you how to apply the ancient wisdom of Asian philosophy and strategy to achieve success in business and life. We will proceed with Episode 8, Deception Without Deceit. You can listen to recap audiobooks published on the channel on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and other podcast platforms. You can search for our channel by typing Legendary Legacy, audiobook free daily into the search bar. Please support our channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing so that we have more motivation to produce more audiobook episodes with the best and latest quality. Please support our channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing so that we have more motivation to produce more audiobook episodes with the best and latest quality. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. A new perspective on deception. The word deception often has negative connotations due to the influence of the Western religious concept of good and evil. From the Eastern point of view, the reality of life spans degrees of gray. Rarely is the reality of life solely black or white. In the same way, we seldom find someone totally pure and untainted by evil thoughts or someone rotten to the core without an ounce of goodness. Deception, to the thick face, black heart practitioner, is a tool to be utilized to gain necessary advantages. Evil does not exist in deception itself, but rather in the user and uses. In Mark H. McCormick's book, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, he states in the chapter on Negotiate ing, the game aspect of negotiation is saying and doing things which puncture those perceptions that come too close to reality while encouraging those perceptions which are furthest from the truth. The 2,000-year-old Chinese battle strategy book, Sun Tzu's Art of War, is a guidebook for deception. Sun Tzu stated, "War is a game of deception. If one is able and strong, then one should disguise oneself in order to appear inept and weak. When you are ready to attack, you must convey the impression that you will not attack." An American client told me, compared to Asians, we are not very good at practicing deception. We refuse to acknowledge that we even practice it, as to do so would violently contradict our cultural belief system. Even though people in the Western culture are repelled by the idea of deception, in reality, we are unable to escape it. While Westerners are practicing deception, they pretend that they are not, whereas Asians accept the reality of deception as the necessary element in their daily lives. They write books on and glorify the study of the art of deception. The utility of deception. As each one of us seeks people and conditions that can benefit our survival, sometimes it is almost impossible to accomplish your greater and worthier objective without employing some degree of deception. Our greatest president, Abraham Lincoln, understood the spirit of thick face, black heart, the fine art of deception without deceit. In Abraham Lincoln's early, fragile political stage, he never expressed openly an intent to free the slaves and make them equal. His position was to follow the majority opinion, which proposed to segregate the blacks after they were freed. After a decisive victory, Lincoln delivered his famous Gettysburg speech, in which he abandoned the position on segregation and stated clearly that all men are created equal. Lincoln could not speak freely in the early stages of his political career. He had to use deception to secure the necessary votes to gain control of the presidency. Only then could he do the greater good for the blacks to free them from the insufferable bonds of slavery and inequality. Creating the illusion of utility. For thousands of years, Chinese masters who have practiced thick face, black heart have been documenting different methods of creating attractive bait to motivate their counterparts to act according to their secret agendas. The worm is seen, but the hook is unseen. The outer appearance draws us, but the hidden catches us. In the same way, when you wish to motivate others to participate with you on a personal or business level, you too need to create an attractive bait. You have to make the benefits obvious to attract your intended participants. If you cannot find a legitimate benefit, then create an illusion of one. By applying this principle, you will be able to entice your potential counterpart to participate with you. In time the benefits will, in fact, be realized by both. The following is such a story. Deception without deceit. Grass seed is a very important agricultural commodity in Oregon. The state supplies nearly 70% of the cool season grass seed for the United States and fulfills nearly 50% of the world's seed demands. Oregon grass seed companies have always been interested in selling seed to China. The problem has been that as determined as Oregon growers have been to sell to the Chinese have been equally determined not to buy. As far back as the early 1980s, the American Seed Trade Association had pitched the grass seeds to a touring Chinese Vice Minister of Agriculture, only to receive a flat no. In fact, given the Chinese idea of grass, the suggestion was ludicrous. It was tantamount to selling refrigerators to Eskimos. In Chinese, the word grass is used pejoratively as a metaphor. A stupid person is said to have a container of grass between his ears. The Chinese have never planted grass for ornamental purposes. The Chinese consider grass a weed, and their idea of beautification is to pull grass out rather than plant it. My client, in trying to sell grass seed to the Chinese in the early 1980s, was suggesting that they expend precious foreign exchange to purchase more grass to pull up and throw away. The Chinese considered the idea of buying grass seeds a huge joke. Still, in 1986 I took on one particular grass seed company as a client. Perhaps little could be done, I thought, but if anything could be done, I could do it. I went to China and presented an intriguing picture to the Chinese government outlining the overwhelming benefits to them, and portraying the Americans as naive. Since Chinese officials have always adopted a general attitude that foreigners are naive, my presentation was easily accepted. I told the Chinese that the American company was looking for a low-cost production source. The American company would like the seeds to be produced in China, and would buy them back at the same price they were purchasing seeds from American farmers. In this way, the project would provide the Chinese government with the opportunity to earn much-needed foreign currency. I was welcomed with open arms and treated like royalty. I knew China would not be able to produce quality grass seeds at a reasonable cost, given the weather conditions and their agricultural methods. In order to sell it back to the United States under terms similar to those given to American farmers, China would have to lose money. As the Chinese enthusiastically began their grass seed production, I also began to visit China frequently. Accompanied by the American technical personnel, we taught the Chinese the necessary production skills and advised them on the benefits of grass seed and how to maintain a plush green lawn. A couple of years later, the Chinese ceased production of American grass seed because it was too expensive for them. However, in the process, they had learned the value of American grass seed. They began to buy directly from my client's company. As I had initially anticipated, the efficiency and beauty of the American product was not lost on the Chinese who hosted the 1990 Asian Olympic Games. With 7,000 athletes participate, in the view of thousands of international media and hundreds of thousands of spectators, the event was a showcase for modern China. They had used the superior American grass seed in their Olympic Village Stadium and it was a great hit. After the success of the Asian Olympic Games, the imported American grass seed became the hottest commodity and commanded as much as $5 a pound as a result of supply and demand. The same grass seed is selling for less than $1 per pound in the United States. Even though the average monthly income of a Chinese worker is $25, lawns are beginning to sprout in public places. The Chinese now see the nice, even, and thick emerald-colored carpets as beautiful rather than undesirable. American grass seed now even grows presently the home and office of China's highest official, Deng Xiaoping, and also Jiang Zemin, the Secretary-General of the grounds of the Beijing's ancient royal garden, which is the Chinese Communist Party. In this incident, both the Chinese people and my American client benefited from my deception by creating the necessary illusion. The principle of utility. Although we consider ourselves civilized and train ourselves to act with grace and good manners, after we remove this false facade we find that we are driven by the impulse of self-preservation, like all creatures. Everything we do is influenced by this instinct. For example, the institution of marriage is often bound by this principle of utility. A husband and wife create an environment that nurtures one another. They depend on each other for emotional, spiritual, and financial support. If the couple no longer experiences love and affection, they will remain together only as long as there are more benefits in staying together than in parting. These benefits could be financial security, welfare of the children, or social status. The reasons for keeping a dead marriage afloat are countless, but the motivation is singular: self-preservation. When a man and a woman can no longer squeeze any benefits out of their relationship, they split. The relationship between parents and children cannot escape this rule either. Mothers would not be able to love their children if our Maker hadn't implanted that love in them. Parents experience self-nurturing by unconditionally nurturing their children. Some parents do not see their children as an expression of love. Instead, they see their children as punching bags, using the children as the object of their frustrations towards life by abusing them physically, verbally, and emotionally. The nurtured child stays with the nurturing parents out of the love they each have for one another. The love they feel within themselves in like a spring shower, which softens and nourishes the other's heart. The abused child stays with their parents purely out of instinct for survival. Even bad parents are necessary for their physical survival. However, the children run away when the pain becomes unbearable. The principle of utility dominates everything we do. We practice utility to support our survival. Even if we are doing selfless service for others, we always benefit equally or more than our benefactor. In the business world, we spend time with those who can or will enhance our financial or social status. If a relationship is not mutually beneficial, very little time will be spent together. Recently, when discussing this utility principle with a friend of mine, he asked me, "Isn't this very negative, when you identify human beings with these traits?" I replied, "No. If I told you that when you put your hand in the fire it would be burned, or if you didn't know how to swim, and wanted to jump into the ocean that you would drown, does that make me evil? Is it wrong of me to inform you of the nature of things? I don't believe it is of any virtue to insist on being ignorant of human nature. Understanding the workings of human nature without pretense allows us to learn how to relate to each other more realistically." Unconditional support. Around 2,700 years ago, in China, Guan was a noble prince whose ancestors' kingdom had been demolished prior to his birth. His family had escaped to the neighboring country of Qi and fell to the lowest social class. Bao, a wealthy scholar of regal birth, recognized the former prince. Guan's family was so poor that he did not even have money for meals. His livelihood was provided solely by Bao. Later, when Bao provided capital for a business venture by Guan, Guan spent it for his personal needs. Bao defended Guan by saying, "Guan is so poor he has a great demand for cash." His intention was never wicked. Soon both had become the target of gossip for the nation. People were laughing at the stupidity of Bao and the ungratefulness of Guan. 3 times Guan was challenged by enemies to a duel, 3 times he fled. Bao would vindicate his cowardliness by saying, "Guan has an old mother at home. It would be against his filial duty to place his body in jeopardy." When Bao was selected to be prime minister, he deferred and insisted on Guan instead. Guan proved himself to be one of the greatest prime ministers in the history of China. However, without the unconditional support and trust of Bao, Guan and China would both have been losers. Confucius remarked, "Without Guan's wise governing, Chinese civilization would have dissolved at that time." Most of my life, I followed the code of unconditional support set by Guan and Bao. Through the experience of life, I realized Guan and Bao's relationship was the exception rather than the rule. The common human relationship normally has a different set of rules. Mutual benefit. When benefits are mutual, then cooperation will follow. Mutual cooperation results in benefits, and thus leads to affection. Tai Wong Gung. Tai Wong Gung lived around 3,100 years ago and, at that time, wrote the first military text in the world. His philosophy was later adopted by countless Chinese military strategists. Even the highly acclaimed Art of War by Sun Tzu was based on his work. His military strategy was not based solely on maneuvering and placing the troop formations, but rather on the understanding of human nature. Through his personal observations and studies of human behavior, he discovered that there existed unwritten laws mandating the principles of utility and mutual benefit that ordinary human beings unconsciously followed. By utilizing this understanding, he could predict the outcome of any given situation, thus maximizing his advantage. He was the first known thick-face, black heart practitioner in the history of China. As Tai Wong Gung stated above, when the benefits are mutual, then cooperation will follow. This is the simple principle of utility. This principle applies in the international arena as well as our personal lives. The following stories illustrate my point. Nelson Mandela in Japan. Nelson Mandela, the South African anti-apartheid leader, visited Japan in late October 1990. He was disappointed and rather surprised to learn that Prime Minister Tashiki Kefu had turned down the request of $25 million needed by Mandela to support the cause of the African National Congress. The official reason Kefu gave was that the Japanese government did not support any political groups. $25 million was not a large sum of money for Japan, one of the modern world's wealthiest countries. The question was not about $25 million, rather it was about utility. If the Japanese government could have realized how they could benefit from supporting Nelson Mandela's cause, the financial support would have followed. Despite the fact the Japanese government did not openly support any political group, there have always been many ways to get the job done. The Japanese government could have encouraged donations from their private sectors. Japan's large corporations have always had a close working relationship with their government. After 3 days' effort in fund raising, Mandela walked away with only $3,000 donated by the private Japanese citizens who were sympathetic to his cause. $3,000 was not even enough to cover Mandela's travel expenses. The Japanese had followed the European communities in cancelling their trade relationship with South Africa. Even so, Japan had traditionally enjoyed a friendly relationship with the South African white ruling power. There were no visible benefits to be gained by worsening an already deteriorating relationship with this government. Furthermore, supporting the battle against apartheid had never been a top priority in Japan's international policy. The Japanese government in general is not very sensitive to racial struggles. When Japan chose to follow the world economic powers in boycotting trade with South Africa, it was not motivated by the human rights issue, but rather, by the fact that Japan was merely following their own agenda in creating their new world leader image. When and if the Japanese government can identify the clear benefits in supporting Nelson Mandela's cause, then the financial support will follow. The story above is not about political issues, but is meant to clarify the motivation behind the Japanese government's decision in refusing to support Mandela's cause. A strategy for self-preservation. In good times, bad times, ancient times, and today, there are always some young, up-and-coming individuals who exhibit extraordinary talent and capabilities in their chosen field. Before they arrived at the top, while they were in the process of proving themselves and utilizing all of their resources to push themselves forward and upwards, they were often labeled as climbers. Interestingly, our society usually looks down on climbers. I believe we should lend a hand to those truly capable climbers. Unless we were born into the Kennedy or Rockefeller families, each one of us is on our way up to new plateaus. Today's nobody may become tomorrow's somebody. While you are on your way up, for your own sake, lend a hand to another climber. Once during an interview, a reporter asked Gregory Peck why he would volunteer to share the leading role position with an unknown actress, Audrey Hepburn, in the film Roman Holiday. His answer was, "My motive was a selfish one. She was so brilliant, I could be an instant star. If I took the leading role alone, it would have made me a laughing stock." It's all about self-preserva, Mr. Lin, a Taiwan business and political leader, told me, years ago, the present Republic of China's presidential chief of staff Y.S. Tsiang voluntarily removed himself from the political circle and started a teaching career. At that time very few people came to visit him. Everyone thought he had no more future in politics. Since I had always admired his charisma, I would invite him to my house for dinner or tea. No one could even imagine then he would be holding the position of chief of staff today. Needless to say, they are still good friends. You can never understand or know the mystery of fate. We should always lend a hand to those capable individuals during the time they are on their way up. For the thick face, black heart practitioner, this is good strategy for self-preservation. The key to being important. Mr. and Mrs. Smith are farmers in Central California. They are just common folk performing their daily duties. They have no money nor power to influence anyone or to change anything. Like most of us, they are not particularly important. Their daughter Christine told me, "My father and my mother are so opposite. My father's whole attitude towards others is to try and impress on them how important he is, because deep down he knows he is not. Conversely, my mother knows she is not important and she accepts it. She never tries to impress anyone or prove a point to show how important she is. Beneath her quiet and gentle manner, she is very wise and down to earth. She understands the basic virtue of life, to serve your fellow man. Through service, she increased her value to her community, therefore automatically she became important." On the other hand, Philip is a brilliant graphics designer. His small studio is always struggling from month to month. It is not the quality of his artwork that jeopardizes his financial success, but rather the quality of his personality. Like Mr. Smith, Philip too felt a lack of self-importance. To Philip, the most important thing is not success in business nor making money. The most important thing to Philip is to be important in others' eyes. He is doing just the opposite of Mrs. Smith. Rather than make himself useful to his customers through excellent service, he is often having an ego competition with the very people he is supposed to be serving. Whenever a customer spoke to him in a tone of voice that he considered disrespectful, he would turn down the work, even though his schedule was totally empty and he was desperately in need of money. Unfortunately, most of his prospective customers did not meet his standard of respect. I asked him why he felt so offended by these people. His answer was, "They think that just because they have a little money they can order me around." Whenever people give him praise, he will soak it up like a dry sponge in a puddle of water. He can feast on that praise for days. Although Philip is desperately seeking agreement that he is important, and craves to be respected, unlike Mrs. Smith, he does not understand that the key to being important is in making yourself useful to others. The distinction between the con man and the businessman. A friend once stated, "A businessman and a con man both understand the value of utility of deception. The only difference between the con man and the businessman is this: the businessman will ultimately deliver the benefits he has promised. The con man will not." A good businessman has the ability to identify clearly to his customer the benefits of doing business with him. He pursues and convinces others that he is able to deliver such benefits. He makes others feel good about their wise choice to do business with him. Even when a businessman is misleading others, he does it with the intention of eventually delivering what he has promised. Sometimes, he may not be able to control all the elements which may cause his failure to keep his own promise. On the other hand, when a con man misleads his victims, he never intends to make his promise come true. There is a popular American phrase, "Fake it until you make it." This statement works well for a con man as well as for a businessman. Both employ the skills of deception and make others perceive the benefits to be gained by associating with them. The difference between the con man and business man is not in their outward actions, but rather in the expression of their soul. Conclusion. The idea of discussing the concept of deception may at first be repulsive to some, yet this is most definitely a beneficial tool in working with man's practical nature. It can assist each of us in avoiding needless setbacks and cause us to gain a winning edge. Summary of key points. 1. Evil does not exist in deception itself, but rather in the user and uses. 2. Human beings will invest time and energy with those who can benefit them the most, now or sometime in the future. This is the simple principle of utility in everything we do it for the benefit of support, our survival. Even if we are doing selfless service for others, we receive the inner rewards. The giver always benefits equally or more than the recipients. 3. A good business deal incorporates, in my business I include your interest, in your business, you include my interest. 4. We should lend a hand to ambitious and capable individuals for the sake of self-preservation. 5. The key to making yourself important is to serve your fellow man. Through service, you will increase your value to others. 6. The con man and businessman both employ the skills of deception and make others perceive the benefits to be gained by associating with them. The difference between the con man and businessman is not in their outward actions, but in the expression of their soul. When you work, you fulfill a part of Earth's fondest dream, assigned to you when that dream is born. Khalil Gibran.